And now, our feature presentation.
God Emperor, the greatest American hero, MAGA Man. He's dropping down from his tower while landing on the nose of the globalist plan. He can't stop what he's doing because he knows what he's doing. You just need to understand. See, there's a storm coming. You better be running. Up to you if you trust the plan. He doesn't jump, he plows through every hurdle. He even makes you fight within your own circle. And he fights you like a ninja turtle. All you do is complain while he lives rent-free inside your brain. And now you've gone insane. TDS makes you want to sing his name.
They went into the booth. They said, is anybody watching? Trump.
Second verse. And we all know this situation's gonna get worse. They keep bashing the old man, but he bashes back, you get hit with the Trump curse. You think your dookie smells sweet, as if you've got pretty feet. Trump drops a tweet like a funky fresh dance on your ass where you cannot compete. That's why you got the blues. You're on the run, shake you out of your shoes. And you're wondering why he's calling you fake news. All you do is complain as he lives rent-free inside your brain. And now you've gone insane. TDS makes me love to sing his name. Right?
Aloha and welcome to Trust and Verify, the only show that tells you don't believe a fucking word we say. Verify it for yourself. We got a great show planned as always. Thank you to everybody over there on D Live. Thank you to everybody in Periscope, YouTube. We're glad to have you on board the listenership. Before we get to the great show, though, I got to introduce my friend, my partner, my co-host, Boogie Bumper. Boogie, how's it going down under?
Very good, James. Very good. And allow me to seamlessly use about 2 or 3 minutes of filler while you address that big grey block on the screen there for everybody going out at home. And let's pretend like that was all part of the plan, shall we?
It's all the plan.
What the hell is good? It's all part of the plan. We're professionals here on Trust and Verify. Thank you for joining us, everyone. Absolute pleasure to be back with the Flying Hawaiian James R for another episode of Trust and Verify. Thank you for sharing the show out. If you did, if you didn't, well, there's always time. The D Live link, you can hit the arrow in the top right hand of the screen or on Periscope. You can share the show out. Obviously, you know how to do that by now. I've had an interesting week, James. How about you?
Nice. I'm glad.
Can I open the kimono? Can I break the fourth wall and just share with our listeners? So if you could hear what James and I talk about before the show actually starts, I think most people would be very, very surprised to know how much we agree on. Because we were talking about, you know, what happened, like the show last week, and we thought it was pretty good. Like overwhelmingly, I don't know about you, James, but most people that got in touch with me seemed to enjoy it. So, you know, they got something out of it, which is what the point was.
Right.
But if I can, I think it's important to clarify for some people, because some people are still getting in touch with me saying, I don't really understand what your position is. And like, okay, I probably could have done better. Like, if I'm being honest, it's a tough discussion to have in an hour and a half because there's so many dynamic points to it. And I was bringing up so many points. So let me say this. For those who still are not aware of what I was getting at, and we're not going to talk about Iran all night because I'm kind of fucking over Iran. I don't care that much about Iran, believe it or not, you know.
Right.
I truly, honestly do not care, you know, what happens in Iran, really. For me, that's up to them. They do, you do Iran, you know, we'll do us kind of thing.
Right.
So if I can clarify the position, it's not I'm against, you know, dead terrorists. I'm not against killing terrorists. I'm not against necessarily the action taking place, right? My position was more, you know, if you look at my Twitter timeline and then take my shows last week and Trust and Verify, here's the problem that I see happening, okay? I predicted that the story would change from we're under threat to we need to save the Iranians.
Right.
And I'm putting a warning out there, you know, that the story, if the story starts changing into we need to arm the Iranian protesters, then I'm pointing to previous conflicts in the region and in other regions where we have, like 4 or 5 years ago, we all agreed that arming groups in the Middle East to take out other groups in the Middle East was a fundamentally bad idea. It's never worked in our favor. What happens is the groups that we arm take control, and then those groups then turn into new bad guys, and we need to arm more groups. And so what I see happening here is potentially we arm a group to take control in Iran, they knock out the government, and then 3 or 4 years and now the story's going to be, well, the region is destabilized, it's become a threat, we need to go in there and clean the mess up, because this is what we've seen time and time and time again. And, you know, you have to go back to 2016, remember Hillary Clinton's platform, we need to arm the Kurds, right? So my fear is, if you are a MAGA person, that your message could potentially be hijacked by the same liberal hawks and the same neocons that everybody was against, you know, a few years ago. And it may only take a week of propaganda from the mainstream corporate press, James, to get everybody on board with this position without anybody stepping back and saying, hang on a minute, haven't we seen this before? Haven't we done this before? Now, I know you see it a different way, and that's cool. Like, that's the point of the discussion, right?
Right.
once we're going to get into it tonight. Once we start labeling, putting big labels across the board on people, which, you know, you can tell me I'm wrong. I don't care. You can call me whatever name you want to call me. I really don't particularly care. People have been telling me I'm wrong since I predicted that the Democrats would win the House back in 2018. Right. And I'm not saying that because I think I'm special or anything like that, but I think sometimes it may be easier for me to see things because I'm not so emotionally wedded to the particulars of the situation, right? Because I'm not in America. I'm not in the same environment as you guys are. So I might have maybe a different perspective on things, which, you know, if we're very emotionally invested in one particular side, James, often we can blind ourselves to things, right? Not either willfully or unwillfully. Is that a fair thing? Have I cleared that up?
Probably not. You probably haven't cleared up a fucking thing. Just being honest, right?
Why are we listening to this terrorist anyway?
Why are we listening to this motherfucker? I don't know. Listen, this is what I want to make this point, is that last week, you know, like we were talking about this before the show. Last week, we had our debate, and then I spent the whole week almost highlighting the exact points you were trying to make. And right now, I'm going to say it again to everybody, is that you need to understand that even when you're right, you have to protect against being lied to and understand what it is you're seeing. For right now, I told everybody, I said, look, it's probable Iran shot down the plane, but you have not seen any evidence. You have convinced yourself. You have lied to yourself that you've seen evidence of the plane being shot down. That you cannot. I've watched all the video that you've watched. I promise you. And all those videos don't show you a damn thing. You do not see a plane that is in Iran being shot down by an Iranian missile. You just don't. The one video that's reported or purported to be from a security camera, you still don't have any sourcing on that. You've got the New York Times telling you that that's what it is. That's it. You've got other people in the government citing that story as the proof that that's it. But is that
a month
really
ago?
proof?
A month ago, ABC was playing footage of a gun range in Kentucky and telling us it was on the Turkish Kurdistan border. You know what I mean?
Yeah, remember the
now
Kentucky
it's like,
gun range?
we've got the footage.
The Kentucky gun range was war on the Syrian border with 100-foot tall conifer trees. What? 100-foot pine trees in the desert? What?
They're keen arborists.
Yeah, they're keen arborists, exactly. So even that's the whole point I've been trying to make, is that even if you're right about what the supposition is, about what the end of the story is, don't lie to yourself, because you have not seen any evidence. The only evidence you have in your possession, I don't care who you are, that Iran shot down that plane is Iranian state TV telling you that they did. That's it. That's evidence. Okay?
Yep.
That is tangible. That is something I can point to when you say, oh shit, the Iranians are telling you we shot down that plane. That's evidence. When you see some random video with a random black sky, you didn't see anything. Okay? Because I'm telling you right now, the human eye can't determine depth in a video. It also can't determine speed. It can do things in relativistic terms, but it cannot tell you what is really going on. That's exactly why I said this before. That's why a cop has to have a radar of your speed, because the human eye lies. It's all about keeping you alive. It's not about giving you the actual details of the speed or the depth or where it's at. It's just, is it far away? Is it close? Is it moving fast? How much time do I have to react? That's how the human eye works.
Yeah, and so I want to get to the politics of Iran before we move on to other matters, and we'll spend a little bit of time on it. So let me put this out there. This is something I've tried to talk about on this show a lot. Try to divorce yourself from the right and wrong, because politics, success for people in political campaigns, just because your cause is righteous doesn't necessarily mean that politically it's the right thing to do, because you can't change anything unless you win. Right? So winning is it's like the fundamental, we've spoken about it before, James, the 3 laws of politics, right? Mm. It's about getting power, keeping power, and stopping somebody else from taking it. Unless you do those 3 things, you can't do anything. So you try to divorce yourself from the right and wrong the moral right and wrong, because there's always going to be people on the other side who have their rights and wrongs and their moral rights and wrongs. And just because you believe deep down in your heart of hearts that you are morally correct doesn't necessarily mean that everybody's going to agree with you. So there are always unforeseen circumstances that come out of various little things. So I thought we could talk about that tonight. And, you know, let me preface this discussion by saying, no, I don't think that Donald Trump's going to lose in 2020.
Right.
Hand up. I cannot see a way that the Democrats would win in 2020, but Donald Trump supporters were very lucky in 2016. You know why? Because they were able to learn a lesson without losing. And that lesson is never underestimate your opponent. That lesson was loud and clear. Just because you think you can't lose a game of football doesn't mean you stop trying. Because the second you stop trying, that's when you lose. The Democrats learned that lesson by losing in 2016. The Republicans learned that lesson, hopefully, by winning in 2016. But, you know, don't rest on your laurels, as they say. Let's bring up...
Real quick before we move away from that, I just want to say there was someone in the chat that even after the conversation I just gave you, still said, but Iran admitted to shooting down the plane. Again, you're lying to yourself, and this will harm you in the future. Because you will automatically assume things that aren't true to be true. That's the evidence. I literally just said this out of my own mouth. The only true evidence that you have that Iran shot down that plane is them admitting to it. And even that is a tiny bit shaky. It's only a tiny bit shaky, but it's not like the frickin' Ayatollah came out on national television and said, we shot down the plane, we apologize, here's all the money, we're going to pay the families. That did not happen. The only thing you have is a military commander that told Iranian state TV. They haven't even made an official statement like that. So we have to be careful about what we assume we know, because that sticks in your mind. And a year from now, 6 months from now, 5 years from now, you will swear to someone, your children, your grandchildren, that you saw a video of the downing of TWA Flight 77. And you'll be like, wait a minute. Why the fuck didn't I see that? Where's the footage? Oh, look, it's this black and white image on a black background from a security camera with absolutely no distinguishable features at all. And you will swear that that happened. Just think about it. Before you do this, this is the same thing that's going to happen to you when it comes to the election. You're going to swear you saw things you didn't see because you're tricking yourself. It's up here. It's literally in your own mind. It is how cognitive dissonance gets created, because you're going to swear you saw footage you didn't see.
It's a human quality, James, to invent a story around incomplete information. Like, it doesn't mean that you're a sucker or anything. This is why people get paid millions of dollars to come up with marketing campaigns. Like, this is why advertising is a thing, because based on the way a certain product is presented, and they give you one or two little data points, one or two little talking points, you'll invent the rest of the story yourself. And you'll say it's the greatest washing liquid I've ever had in my entire life. It does things that no other washing liquids do, when essentially all washing liquids are the fucking same, right? Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There might be the color on the packaging or whatever.
Yeah, I want to hammer this point home because people still not getting it. Is that, look at, what did Trudeau say? I mean, let's think about it. First of all, it's Justin Trudeau, the liar-in-chief of Canada. Everybody knows this. Everybody agrees to this. And even he didn't use definitive language. But there are people that think he did. There are people that think they heard him use definitive language. He didn't. He said, seems to indicate, and it was from our allies. And I just want to get to the bottom of it through investigation. I want you to think about that. He didn't use and say, Iran did this. We have video. We can prove it. Here's how we prove it. Here's the missile track. This is where it launched from. This is the guy who did it. That's what happened. He didn't say that. He said, seems to indicate. So you've got that. That's one piece of evidence. It's a very minor piece of evidence. The only true evidence really that really starts moving the needle is when you have official statements coming out of Iran saying they did it. Because we haven't seen a missile track. We haven't seen video that identifies the plane in any way, doesn't even identify that it was a plane. That could have been a cruise missile they shot down. That could have been footage from 1988 taking over of Baghdad. You don't know. Because
it could have been lifted from a 1976 website called Alien Autopsy Roswell.com. You know what I mean? It could have been a UFO video.
It
for all
could
we
be
know.
anything. We don't have all the facts even today, is my point. But you damn sure didn't have the facts on the day that it happened. But people were swearing they saw the plane shot down. No, you didn't. Go ahead and I dare you, I challenge every one of you. Prove it. Prove it to me. Tweet the shit out of it and prove it to me where you can identify the plane, the video, any of it. You can't.
The best aeronautical crash investigators in the world haven't agreed.
That's right.
You know, the guys who do it for a living have not come out and definitively said one way or another. And another thought bubble, and again, I'm not saying that this is necessarily true, but let's put things on the table. You might say to yourself, why would Iran admit to shooting down a passenger plane if they didn't do it? Now, that's the first level. Now skip to the next level of thinking. I can think of a number of reasons why they would admit to shooting down a plane if they didn't do it. Have you not been paying attention to what happened last week? Do you think if Iran fought the issue, if Iran came out and said, we did not shoot down any passenger plane, fuck you, anyone who accuses us, with all of the international pressure that's mounting on them, do you think that it's on the table that they might say, look, even just say they didn't do it, right? Do you think it's on the table for them sitting around, their meeting of the minds and say, if we just say that we did it and it was an accident, we can at least put a full stop behind it. If we fight it, people are going to try and come in. They're going to try and investigate. They're going to ramp up pressure. They're going to call it a war crime if we fight it, because, it's better to admit to doing it than to fight doing it and have everybody blame you for it, right?
And who's running cover for Iran? Let's not forget. Yep. Who's running cover for them? Even Justin Trudeau ran cover for Iran when he seemed to indicate, but it looks like an accident. So now I want you to understand. We just gave you perfect propaganda for Iran. They get to look tough, and they get to blame Donald Trump for it. Well, if Donald Trump wouldn't have provoked us, we wouldn't have been at a war footing. Our guys wouldn't have been so nervous. We can point back to the history. Look at what happened in Iraq when America came in with all their cruise missiles. Our guy thought it was a cruise missile. We were just trying to protect grandma down the street. Yep. We just sold the Iranian position for you. Is there any more questions about why this would be covered this way? We have not seen a single shred of evidence yet. And yet we're falling for it and creating fights on Twitter amongst MAGA supporters over, it was a plane crash. No, it wasn't a plane crash. Fuck you. Fuck you. Ah! Why? Why? You have no evidence. Please prove things out and think and slow down a bit. We don't need, let me put it like this. Why are you in a rush to make a judgment one way or the other? Right? Again, why? What good would it do if you can assume today you were correct? How does it help your life? How does it help the country? How does it help elect Donald Trump? Whether you're right or wrong, explain how it's important for you to make a decision lickety-split.
Because, James, somebody is wrong on the internet and I need to tell the world about it. That's why. Yeah. There's a lot of people who are wrong on the internet on the reg. So, all right. So let's talk about like the politics of this, okay? And I think there's a couple of interesting data points. Again, for those with short memories, just in case you forgot, no, I don't think Donald Trump is going to lose, but I would suggest, just look at 2016 to understand why thinking that he can't possibly lose and acting like it is not necessarily, but possibly a losing strategy. This is Kellyanne, who I adore, James. That's out in the open. By the way, Kellyanne, call me. I'm still here. I'm still waiting, Kellyanne.
Can I open the kimono? Boogie before the show, he says, hey, anything you want to throw into the show? And I said, well, there's this little press conference with Kellyanne. He said, Kellyanne, can you send it to me?
So let's play a little bit of Kellyanne talking to the press, and then I want to ask you a couple of questions and see what you think, and then we'll go into other stuff.
Can you walk us through the situation right now with the troops? I know the State Department put out a statement saying that we would rather stay there, and that's what they're trying to negotiate.
Where is there?
In Iraq. And the Parliament voted to get us out of there. So
that's a non-binding resolution. First of all, you know that.
Yes, but still it's a statement that they don't want the U.S. troops there anymore. So I'm wondering what is it that's being negotiated now?
The United States of America is not going to make policy, particularly military policy, based on a statement, quote unquote. Respectfully, by talking heads or through a non-binding resolution. The president and his top security and intelligence officials just this week at different times has made clear that we're not leaving Iraq. And I think that I would refer you to the State Department's statement that you referenced at the beginning of this for the rest.
The president just said the imminent threat was 4 embassies were targeted.
Okay, I think we'll leave it there. So there's a few things that I dragged out of just that couple of minutes, James. So, and I know you're going to see it a different way. So let's have at it. So first of all, the non-binding vote in Iraq. Okay, yes, that's true that it was a non-binding resolution, but I don't think you do a vote like that to make it stop there. Like, so generally what you can do is, like, it's a non-binding vote. It's like a conscience vote. And then from that, that's when the stories start getting written, right? That's when the speeches start coming. Hey, we had a non-binding vote, so you can build momentum to something that's more concrete. So I think it's, a tad disingenuous for people to say, well, it's a non-binding vote, therefore it's irrelevant. I don't think it's irrelevant. That to me indicates something could come of it later on, okay? The other thing she mentioned there is the president and the top security advisors, we're not getting out of Iraq. So now we have an official position. So, my stance on this, I'm not going to play any more speeches. If Donald Trump says in a speech, we need to get out of Iraq, I'm not going to amplify that, because the official position, regardless of what's in the speeches, regardless of the videos that people make on YouTube about we need to bring the boys home, the official position is we ain't leaving. So we can put that in concrete now. The third thing is, here's the thing. Here's a truthism for you, James. Donald Trump's base is probably going to be regarded 20, 30, 50 years from now as the most loyal base behind any president in modern history. Because regardless of the attacks, regardless of the smear, regardless of the efforts to try and bring him down, corporate media and the Democrats all admit that you cannot change Donald Trump's core support base by more than 1 or 2 points either way. These people are locked in, all right? They're locked in. So with that consideration, I think it's fair. Let's use the Chris Mack analogy, okay? 3/3. A third and a third and a third. So a third of the country is locked in behind Donald Trump and they ain't moving. They're voting for him no matter what. A third of the country is on the opposite side of the ledger, potentially. And then you've got this big smack of a third in the middle. So when Kellyanne and when Donald Trump and when other surrogates come out and talk about the virtues of, particular actions, the virtues of staying in Iraq, for example, hardline stuff, they're not talking to you necessarily. They don't need to win your support. You're going to support them no matter what. We know that. It's documented. So what I fear here is, because she says later on in this speech, which we didn't get to, I don't understand why people are supporting terrorists. Now, I would say, if I was Kellyanne in that moment, because remember who you're talking to here. You actually need those independent votes, a lot of whom were former Democrat voters in places like Michigan and Wisconsin, who might not necessarily agree with staying in Iraq. We know the overwhelming majority of people do not want to stay in Iraq. Donald Trump's support base aside, that's true, right? So we know that. I don't think it's necessarily fruitful or wise to say anybody who's now against staying in Iraq is on the side of terrorists, because you might piss off a lot of independent voters who are sitting on the fence, who are former Democrats, and you're going to need those people in 2020. Is that a fair thing to say?
Yeah, I think that
there's a lot there. Sorry.
There's a lot there. So I think at the end there of saying, you got to be careful about, what you're saying. Why are you supporting terrorists? But I would point out a couple of facts that I don't know if we've talked about it in quite this way. First, let's look at the overall premise, right? Is getting out. What is getting out? See, getting out needs to be defined, and it's not been defined. I'll give you that. We've never had a definition of what getting out actually means, okay? Because I would point to the fact that we have troops, I think, in every single country on the planet. We have some level of troops. We have boys in South Africa. We got boys in Africa. We got boys in Kenya. We got boys in every country, India. We got boys even in the edges around like China and Russia. Okay? Other than those solid nations like China, Russia, we pretty much even have a base in almost every single country. So what does getting out actually look like? That's an undefined or ill-defined definition just to begin with on that phase.
To be fair, Berlin and Tokyo don't look like Baghdad.
I'm not sure what that exactly means, but
well, you've got troops in Berlin. Great, it's not a war zone.
Yeah, I understand. That's why I didn't even bring them up. I didn't even bring up Tokyo or Berlin. Obviously, there's the reasons that we have troops in Tokyo has nothing to do with the reasons why we have troops in Kenya. Okay, they're completely separate issues. Again, it comes down to an ill-defined position of what does getting out mean. And essentially, to me, it means drawing down to a level of just stability, of just being able to protect our interests if needed. Other than that, non-intervention. In other words, we're there, but we're not doing anything other than protecting shit that whatever we see has strategic or tactical value to the United States. That's bottom line. But I will also move on to the point that makes that even more likely, in my opinion, not less likely, to actually draw those troops down in Iraq. Is exactly what we just saw happen in Iran. Believe it or not, again, I'll highlight what happened in Syria. I'll highlight what happened in every military action that President Trump has taken. Somehow, magically, we've ended up with less troops, less war, less violence. Every time. And it's happening right now in Iran. Literally, we frickin' killed Soleimani. Okay? He's dead. And all of a sudden, the things that we were talking about, that people didn't understand how they were going to affect Iran, we're watching, 30 generals get removed from command out of Iran? No, the new replacement for Soleimani has no autonomy. We're watching the people of Iran getting ready to overthrow their government. That puts destabilization inside their country, which makes it less likely that Iran has the resources because of economic sanctions on top of political will because of the attitude of their people to fuck around in Iraq. So what did we actually accomplish? We actually could accomplish lowering our footprint in Iraq just because we killed Soleimani. So again, it points to actually a winning strategy here that actually decreases the likelihood of further violence over the long term. And I don't mean by like the 10-year term. I mean over like, the 10-week term.
Okay. So good filibustering. So let me give you my side of that, and I don't want to get into the debate again because we've got so much to get through, but just if you'll allow me space to retort slightly. I think to most people out means out, and I think to most people out does not mean maintaining a presence. And I think, to be fair, as long as there is a presence, that presence will be targeted. I think it's, like, with all due respect, I think it's fantasy thinking to think that you can keep people in that area and have them not be, like, if we think that we're going to keep troops or keep, infrastructure in a particular area and it's not going to be targeted in the future by somebody, that's insane to me. So as long as people are there, those people will be targeted. So it's not going to change, right? So in that respect, I think most people believe out means out, being people are not going to be targeted. So I can't redefine out as being in. That's just fundamentally wrong.
No. Again, you have to point to this, right? I agree with what you're saying. I even understand your point of out is out, right? It just means out. But there's it seems to be a fundamental lack of what's important to America and the Western world as a whole. How far do we pull out? Okay, let's take your strategy for a second and say out is out. Okay, so we pull out of Iraq. At what border do we stop pulling out? Do we pull back all the way to Germany? Do we pull back to Italy? Do we stop in Turkey? Where do we stop? Do we stay in Jordan, Israel, Saudi Arabia? So at what point do we pull back? And then what happens then is that they're still targeted. This is the problem.
Yeah. See, this is the problem, right? So we can agree, as long as we're in a particular theater, that, like, you know, if it's get out of the Middle East, then it's get out of the Middle East. If it's get out of Iraq, then it's get out of Iraq, right? So you can define that, I think, to be fair. It's not like we haven't left a war zone before. Remember, we got out of Vietnam. So it's happened before, okay? So here's the problem, right? Every time there's an attack, think of the independent voter. Now, I know you do the nuance thing, and you're a hardcore Donald Trump supporter. Most people don't do the nuance thing as a hardcore Donald Trump supporter, okay? These are I'm just highlighting hurdles which I think can come up in the future. Every time that there's some kind of attack or some kind of incident, you remind a whole bunch of independent voters who think out means out that they're not out yet. And people don't want to be reminded of that, James. So every time Kellyanne Conway has to come out and make a statement about some kind of missile launch in Iran, or every time the news says another American has been killed overseas, you might say, hey, we can't get out. We've got to protect our interests. We've got to go get the bad guys. But you're reminding people who think out means out that they're not out yet. And they'll say to themselves, why are we still there? You know, after 20 years, people are weary. We agree on that, right?
That's a great political point, and that's a great political argument that is exactly what we need to protect against, and why Donald Trump gave a speech for the whole world that said Iran is pulling out. They're standing down. Even Iran is
till next time.
But I understand it's politics, right? It's just like you had a great political argument. That's a great political argument. And that's the point, right? Politics is always selling somebody something. We're selling you our position, and it doesn't matter whether you're a Democrat or a Republican. That's what the root of politics is we're selling. I'm selling you to be on my team. Come get on board. Here's where the Trump train is. The line starts behind me. Are you ready to do this action, whatever that action may be, whether it's cut taxes, whether it's kick the Iranians' asses, whatever. Politics is sales, okay? So I understand what you're saying, and that's why we're always going to be able to highlight counterpoints to that. Is that I think that the sales of the politics of the situation is going to go in our favor, because long term, the world is safer when America watches everybody else's back. It just is. And I don't mean that to be it's only America, because Australia does the same thing as well in their region, right?
I know. But there's also a lot of Americans that don't want to be the police force anymore.
That's true.
Which is another reality.
I totally agree that we don't necessarily want to police the world, right? But there's no force on the planet, none, other than I'll name them, and literally it's only America, the United Kingdom, and Australia that stand up for other people's rights in other countries. We're it. There's nobody else on the planet, not even Israel.
We've done it in our region as well, like in Asia. But again, this is why I said, like, it's not necessarily right and wrong. We know that lowering taxes is a net benefit to people, but that doesn't mean that the people who vote for people see it that way, right? See what I'm getting at here? So, like, if we agree that this is going to be the election on independent votes, like for fighting over independent votes, then we have to agree that the sales pitch of we need to stay in Iraq because the world is safer when we're being the police force for the rest of the world may not necessarily be the one that people are going to get behind. Now, could be proven right, could be proven wrong. But again, I think just being open to that option is at least something that we should do. Like we at least deserve that conversation. I want to show you this. This is Doug Collins, James. Doug Collins broke 2 golden rules here in this little clip. I want to show you.
An apology this hour from Republican Congressman Doug Collins after he accused Democrats of siding with terrorists over the President of the United States.
Now, can you identify the 2 rules that I think Doug Collins broke in this one sitting? One, he called everybody who disagreed with him on Iran a terrorist sympathizer, and which is the kind of, like we said, the kind of votes that they're going to need to retain in 2020 in places like Michigan, in places like Pennsylvania. And then 2, he came out and apologized for it. So if you're going to say it, don't apologize, man. Stick to your guns. You know what I mean? Never, ever, ever apologize to the corporate press, James. Doug Collins. Big smacks for Doug Collins on that one. Like, if you're going to say it, you stick to it, right? Am I wrong?
No, the press will light you on fire no matter what you do. You might as well just modify your position. I mean, I know Absolutely. That sounds cynical. I get it. But Never apologize to these fucks. They don't care. You can't appease them. There's nothing that will make them change their attitude towards you as a Republican. So why bother?
Correct. Here's another thing I want to show you, which I thought was very fun. People calling me a traitor after last week's show. I'm just going to indulge a little bit here. I'll tell you why it doesn't worry me, because it's happened so many times before. This is actually, you are just playing the role of the programmed citizen. You are playing the role of the citizen who is programmed to negative stimuli to act out and start accusing people and insulting people. It's not your fault. You're just like everybody else. This is what the mainstream media was doing after Bill Clinton launched a strike in Iraq against Saddam Hussein while he was getting impeached, James.
By the way, Larry Eagleburger went even a step further tonight, and the secretary said that, of course, in his view, politics played a part, was a component in the president's decision. Is it the height of cynicism in the 90s that we are discussing this at all? That anyone doubts the purity of a president's moment when committing troops in action militarily?
Okay, here's another one.
One of the most disturbing and deeply cynical days in American political memory, when you have the head of the Senate saying he does not support the airstrike because he doesn't believe in the motive or the timing.
Yes, Republicans out there, you were acting just like the Democrats are acting today back when Bill Clinton did it. Don't pretend otherwise.
As salvo after salvo of cruise missiles continue to punish Iraq, Republicans in Congress are engaging in conduct that during the war in Vietnam they called giving aid and comfort to the enemy. Although they have backed off from the most inflammatory language of yesterday, they are still pressing for the president's impeachment.
There you go.
Colonel Oliver North. During Vietnam, sir, I believe you would have called those kinds of criticisms of the commander-in-chief treason.
There you go. So, you know what I mean? It's just what people do. When there's some kind of strike, and it's been happening for over 20 years, James. It happened under George W. Bush as well. If you were against the war in Iraq, you were a traitor, you were a terrorist sympathizer, you loved Saddam Hussein, you loved Osama bin Laden. When it happened under Bill Clinton, the Democrats, when they launched missiles, the Republicans were calling them cynical, and the Democrats were calling you traitors and terrorist sympathizers. It's just what people do. So, you know what I mean? It just happens. Here's a poll for you, James.
I will say, though, that Geraldo did get kicked out of country because he gave away troop movements. So Geraldo single-handedly got all media removed from a war because of what he did.
For that mustache.
No, it's because he literally drew in the sand the military positions, and the military had to scrap complete battle plans, move troops thousands of and hundreds of miles around, and reform a whole new battle strategy because pretty much Geraldo gave it away on fucking worldwide television. That's a big deal.
He was just breaking news, James.
Yeah,
it's breaking news.
He broke news.
ABC News Ipsos poll, a majority of Americans disapprove of how President Trump is handling the current situation with Iran. Of course, take it with a grain of salt, absolutely, with all polls these days. And I would add, including the ones that say that Donald Trump is really popular with African-American voters, take that with a grain of salt too. You never know. That might be somebody seeding, that might be somebody bloating numbers in order to motivate Democrat black voters to get out and vote against him, right? Remember, think beyond the first level. New public opinion data from ABC News and Ipsos shows the American public continues to disapprove of President Trump's handling of the situation with Iran and feel as it has made the country less safe, even after both sides appear to have stepped back from the conflict. In this poll conducted Friday and Saturday, January 10 and 11, we find that 56% of Americans disapprove of how President Trump is handling the situation with Iran, and 52% believe the airstrike that killed Iranian General Soleimani made the United States less safe. I would put it to you that that's probably not as bad as many people would have suspected it would have been. You know what I mean? Like I would put it to you that if you were like in Donald Trump's circle right now, you would look at that and probably be optimistic. I would suspect, because like we say, you know, take the polls with a grain of salt, James. It's not 7-3. It's not 8-2. It's not 9-1. It's just on the wrong side of 50-50. He's operated just on the wrong side of 50-50 for the last 3 years. You know what I mean? So I don't think that that's necessarily going to hurt him, right? Am I wrong?
No, this isn't going to hurt him in any way. I mean, look, 95% approval in the Republican Party. That tells you 5% of Republicans are fucking, just rhino bastard traitors. Then you got, you got
terrorist
today.
Sympathizers, James.
Yeah, they're all terrorists themselves. Those 5%. We have 33% of all black people are now on board Donald Trump's Trump train. So remember, no Republican has ever won the White House with more than 8% of that vote. So no matter how you slice that poll, that's good for Donald Trump. We're going to win the black vote. You can go back to right now as a total poll, which covers independents, 53% approval in the entire United States, which encompasses Democrats, Republicans, and independents. So when you stack up all of the numbers, you can't find enough slippage unless somehow Donald Trump makes a serious gaffe that would cause a single-handed crash. But when you start looking at how it literally in most of the history of the United States, there's really only one thing that people have ever voted for more than the economy, and that was war. So when you start stacking up the numbers, you start realizing there's about a 0.0 chance that Donald Trump's going to lose the election. But if we all go to sleep and don't show up to vote, it's our fault. We're going to fuck ourselves. Again, where we started the show, you better learn the lesson that we lost the House in 2018 because confident voters were overconfident and stayed home. Bottom line, that's what happened.
And to that point, somebody in the chat said, Boogie, using the black vote as a bad example, there's overwhelming evidence. Yes, perhaps. But the best evidence? Polling day, right? That's when that's when we get the real evidence. Everything up until then is potential for manipulation. And it always has been. I'm not saying that there isn't overwhelming evidence to say that, black voters are coming out and support Donald Trump more so than people would have expected sort of 4 or 5 years ago. But until election day, we can say that it is, we can hope that it is. But, as a former prime minister of this country once said, James, there's only one poll that matters. And that's the poll on election day. Right?
That's correct.
I want to show you this, and this is gonna get me in the shit.
I love it. Notice, I do want to say this. Hold on, before you even play this, look, there's nobody else out on the internet like Boogie and I that just say, I know you're gonna hate me after I play this, but I'm gonna do it anyways. Like nobody has I don't know, maybe it's just the balls to do it. Like, it's like saying,
fuck it. Yeah.
Fuck it. This is honesty, man.
Fuck it. And again, people are going to misinterpret this, but that's fine. I don't particularly care. I'm not playing Tulsi Gabbard because I'm a fan of Tulsi Gabbard. James and I have spoken at length as to why we are not fans of Tulsi Gabbard. The reason I'm going to play this, I'll explain after this short sort of 60 seconds, and I'll point you back to this very show where we said this very thing could potentially happen.
Trump disgraces our military by using our men and women in uniform as mercenaries, serving the interests of multinational corporations like ExxonMobil.
Hang on, James. Hold your fire. Hold your fire, sir. Hold your fire. Let me get through it. Just load up that musket quietly behind the tree, sir, if you would. Okay? Do not alert the enemy to your presence just yet. Okay?
Foreign countries like Saudi Arabia. Now, for political reasons, he claims he is against so-called endless wars, but he supports and is carrying out 19th and 20th century style naked imperialism.
Imperialist dog.
In October of 2019, Trump began our occupation of Syrian oil fields using the excuse that he was protecting the oil from ISIS. But he revealed his real reason is to prevent the Syrian people from having access to their own oil. What he really was considering was to plunder the oil in partnership with ExxonMobil or some other multinational corporation.
Or some other.
On October 27th, 2019, regarding Syria, he said, quote,
"We are leaving soldiers to secure the oil."
Okay. Now James is fucking, he can't wait. He's like a thoroughbred at the gate of the Kentucky Derby. He can't wait to break out of there.
It's
what
Obama.
I said on this show, James, 8 months ago, 9 months ago. Again, I don't think Tulsi Gabbard's going to win, but here's an issue, right? If Donald Trump have you got me?
Yeah, go ahead. Go. Sorry.
Okay. If I said pretty much verbatim what I'm going to say now. if Donald Trump vacates the policy of, you know, we let's not go over the old arguments, but we need to get out of the Middle East. If Donald Trump vacates that space, which was, I gotta point back people to history, was very popular in the election of 2016 when matched up against the hawkish Hillary Clinton, who wanted to invade everyone, right? He took the polar opposite position in those campaigns. Regardless of definition, that's the perception that people have. If he vacates that anti-war, let's get out of Middle East space, somebody else is going to fill it. Like, he's going to get flanked on that, right? Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that Tulsi Gabbard's going to win, but it could drive a lot of potential swinging purple former Democrat voters right back into the open arms of the Democrat Party in 2020 in key battleground states.
Your point is valid, but I don't think it's going to win at all. I don't even think it's sellable past that statement. First of all, let me start here with the blatant political sell we just started this program talking to you about. There are going to be people now that think that there is evidence that ExxonMobil had a strategic plan with Donald Trump. That's the game. Now, I doubt it's going to be anybody on Team MAGA that's going to think that, but there will be some that are going to see
talking point
that it, because this was what you could tell it's a lie by the way she followed it up, is because, she gave you a specific to make it lock in your mind, ExxonMobil, and immediately followed it with, or some other globalist company. In other words, she has no fucking evidence.
I laughed when I saw that.
She's got nothing. She's just making it up.
You've got to be specific, Tulsi. Be specific. You can't just say, some other company. What?
Right. Like, again, so you can tell it's a complete political maneuver right there. She literally just told you a lie, straight to your face. Obama, and we just pulled it up, 2012, 2014, there's an article that specifically spells out that the deep, dirty secret of Obama was the fact that he literally was mercenary war. He was telling you how he had a light footprint in all of these Middle Eastern places, but it was because the United States government was funding every single pay-for-play soldier on the planet. We had more mercenaries working for the United States government under a Barack Obama than has ever probably totaled in the history before him.
Correct. And can I just add to that, James? That's the reason why I shared this story out. It's from 2016. It's worth refreshing. I'm very glad that so many people have read it and retweeted it. Another thing that was in that story is the casualties, right? So when Obama points to, we had very low casualties in the Middle East during this period, what they don't tell you is that the casualties of private military contractors are not recorded in the same way that military personnel are. So arguably the footprint was much, in reality, like the Democrats love to play this game of, bait and switch, right? Hey, we don't have a big footprint. Look, we haven't got many military personnel over there. We've got very low casualties. They don't tell you about the private military contractors, which outnumbered the military personnel 2-1 under Barack Obama, and were, being leased out to various interests in the Middle East to conduct warfare, pay for play, if you want to call it that, fine. But the casualty rates were just as bad, but they pretend like it's not. So that's why I shared that story out. Like, hey, don't forget what was going on here.
Yep, exactly. And that's the sick truth here behind what she's doing. Your point is valid, though, that she's trying. This is politics. She's trying to fill a space that they perceive may be open. Again, I'm here to say that I don't believe it is, because, again, I think the American people are smart enough to realize Donald Trump only has to point to the past to prove why he has to protect the Syrian oil. It's literally historical evidence that this exact thing he's saying happened. Barack Obama let them take the Syrian oil, use that oil, sold it on the open market, used the cash from that oil to create the ISIS caliphate, which had more territory than any other in multiple countries than has ever been seen before. Donald Trump wiped all them fucksticks out and literally took away their money supply, which led to things like the Baghdadi raid. These things all are connected. Every single little dot and tittle here is definitely connected. And Donald Trump is going to make that a very easy case for why we have to keep Syria safe with that oil. And Syrians are getting the oil. That's another thing. This is a complete line of horse shit. If they weren't, Russia would be screaming to the bloody fucking murder. Because Russia's whole point in being in Syria was they wanted a fucking oil pipeline to get their oil over to the Gulf. So, again, these are all things that can be documented, pointed to, easy. And so that's a losing position for her. I understand the play, though.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, like, it's going to happen if you vacate the space. And, I mean, you know, I'd just refer back. We're only talking about 90,000 votes here across those three states. Without winning those three states, Donald Trump is not in the White House, you know. So I don't think he's going to lose, but that doesn't mean I stop paying attention, right? You did remind me, though, of actually what I thought was a Mike Pompeo misstep through the week, if I can just, put my hand up and say, point of privilege, Mike. Mike Pompeo came out and said one of the reasons we need to stay in Iraq is to continue the fight against ISIS. And I said, I can picture Donald Trump picking up the phone to Mike. I wish I had the clip. I watched it during the week. I think Donald Trump might have picked up the phone at that point and said, no, Mike, don't say we're continuing the fight against ISIS, because at every single fucking speech, I'm saying we wiped out ISIS 100%. So please do not tell people that we're still fighting ISIS, okay? Like, we can't, 100%, like, it's not out versus in versus out here. 100% means everyone. So if we're going to say we wiped them out 100%, then don't say we need to stay to continue fighting the people that we've 100% wiped out. Please, Mike, please.
Yeah, you're going to play that, right?
I wish I had it. I've watched it through the week, and it's in the archive somewhere.
I was hoping that you'd play it because I wanted to see it, because hey, this would not be the first time where it was
on one of the morning shows, if that helps, like one of the morning shows that he was doing in the couple of days after the Soleimani strike.
And I think it's actually good that the people around Donald Trump make mistakes. And here's why. It's because Donald Trump proves that he's the one in charge, because he corrects those mistakes almost instantaneously. So that's why I was curious to see that, because, usually what happens is they make a mistake and then they come back out and say, sorry, I misspoke. I shouldn't have said it this way. And you could tell that exactly what you just said happened. Is Donald Trump picked up the phone and said, are you fucking stupid? What the fuck are you talking about? What?
Mike, I don't care if there's one guy over there in a Toyota Hilux with a gun strapped to the back of it. Our official position is he's a gun salesman, okay? He's not from ISIS. We wiped him out 100%. Do not tell people that ISIS is coming back, okay, Mike? Thanks, Mike.
We have to prevent against ISIS being able to reform, because that's the facts that, like you said, terrorists are always going to target. That's a fact. That you're not going to.
They're always going to come back.
Yep.
They're always coming back. You can't, we both said it. You said before the show, I don't know if I'm allowed to reveal this or not, but after the debate last week, James and I were talking before today's show, and he said, we had our debate last week, we had our disagreements, and then he said, I basically spent the rest of the fucking week, saying what you said.
Yeah, I literally did.
You can't kill an idea, right? You can't kill an idea.
It's not that I took Boogie's position, it's that I was, the points that Boogie was trying to make is what we were trying to tell everybody. Like, again, how did we open the show? Your lying eyes are lying to you. Make sure you're paying attention to what's going on and think about everything. Sometimes it takes Boogie saying something outlandish to wake you up to think about what the hell he's saying. Because you have to ask yourself, why am I so mad at Boogie? What did he say? And then maybe you can think about that. But that's for thinking people, rational people. People that are going to digest themselves and don't take yourself too seriously. Because if you were the smartest person in the world, you'd be the richest person in the world, probably. So, it's just a case like that where you got to take yourself a little bit back and say, okay, why do I think these things? And, okay, Boogie's point's wrong. Cool, keep going. But if you think that Boogie was right after you thought about it, then cool, modify your position. Figure out, look, you can't let yourself be lied to because you're going to be driven into holes. Like, the media is coming for all of us. We've been highlighting this. Why are we on DLive? Why are we even trying to launch this new platform over there? Because the media is coming for every one of us. They're trying to silence your voice every single day. So when they're telling you a story, if you're not questioning the story because you think you agree with it, you have a problem, because you're not finding the lies that are inherent in that position. And I pointed it out in the Fox News stories. They lied, made 2 or 3 lies, even though they were right. There was 2 or 3 lies in every article they were putting out lately. And you gotta recognize that, because there's gonna come a time. Remember what we're talking about here. Remember what the overriding thing is here that's more important than anything else we could ever talk about. This is more important than anything that is happening in the world. We are at information apocalypse. We are here. And if you don't understand that, that's where you're going to lose the war. Okay? We might win a battle. We're going to lose the war. Information apocalypse is when they can do anything because you don't even believe the truth. You don't believe the truth. You don't believe the lies. You don't believe anything. That's what the media has done to us. We are at information apocalypse. It's not coming. It's here.
That's right. The point of this level of misinformation is not to get you to believe the wrong thing. It's very easy to get people to believe the wrong thing, James. The point of this level of misinformation is to get you to believe nothing. To believe nothing. That's the point. How to jump Trump, James. Rick Wilson on running against the devil. Let's move away from Iran now and get into the other side. Because I think, to be fair to this show, not to pat ourselves on the back too much, I don't think anybody else was covering the midterms like we covered it. I don't think anybody else was saying, hey, look at these Democrats and what they're doing. Look at their strategy. Look at the kind of candidates they're running, right? And again, I was told that I'm a Democrat supporter and I want the Democrats to win for merely pointing out the reality that they had a pretty good fucking chance of winning the midterms in 2018 based on what they were doing, right? They were running local business people. They were running military veterans. They didn't have any DNC insignia on their campaign stuff in local races. They didn't refer to Washington. They tried to make it like it's us versus them. I'm a local guy for local issues. I'm not, I'm in favor of like local health care and all of that kind of shit. And it worked. And it worked because people believe stuff. People believe promises, right? But this is Rick Wilson, and I think this is good because he's an anti-Trump guy, right? But what he details in this is exactly the kind of it's exactly the kind of strategy that we were pointing out the Democrats were doing in 2018. Okay, let's go here. Listen to this. This is this Rick Wilson guy who's written this book, How to Fight Against the Devil. We control 38 state legislatures right now, and there's a reason for that. It's because of guys like me, he says on the phone from Florida. I help to build some of the tools in the toolbox for how you go out and exploit cultural divisions in the country and the political visions to win Republicans in blue and purple areas. On paper, it looks hard, but we worked hard and recognized that the way to win is sometimes not to tell people who you really are. I would say that's always the way you win in politics, regardless of the party you're in, generally speaking, through history. Wilson's new book is a guide to how he thinks Trump can be beaten. But again, like, just because we're adults here, this is not high school. You're allowed to take somebody's ideas and cheat. You're allowed to use somebody else's ideas, right? So he's writing a book on how Trump can be beaten. I would just merely say, okay, just lift that and apply it in reverse. Sounds like a good idea to me. The chief way to do it, he says, is to make the election a referendum on the president. He thinks impeachment and the Iran crisis, which happened after he went to press, only help prove Trump isn't fit for office. He thinks Democrats are making a huge mistake in the campaign so far by telling voters, listen to this, who they really are, James. Democrats are making a mistake by telling voters who they really are. See, it's not all bad news coming from this guy. This guy might hate Donald Trump, but he gets it. He gets what the Democrats are doing wrong. And don't we say often that that's the great talent of Donald Trump, is getting the Democrats to show who they really are, right? Which is something that they do not want to do. The main candidates are veering too far left, he thinks, away from the disaffected Trump voters they will have to turn. Among progressive, again, that's a point we've made on this show, right? They're out there arguing for things like transgender abortions when blue-collar workers in defunct steel mills in Pennsylvania are saying, I just want a paycheck. I just want my job back. Among progressives, the Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren, a.k.a. chief pile of Sitting Bull, praised for her detailed policy plans. But to Wilson, Democratic policy is the enemy, whether it concerns Medicare for all, gun control, or women's right to choose. Listen to this. It's a great quote. Guys like me who still work on the Trump side of the fence can always turn it into something that is a millstone around their neck, right? Look what they're trying to do to Trump now in regards to impeachment. Look what we just saw with Tulsi Gabbard and that little video that she put out. That's what they're trying to do. Take positives, turn them into negatives, right? Mm-hmm. It's not even that hard. Elizabeth Warren produces a 600-page healthcare plan, and my research geeks can't find, 30 things in there that I can't demagogue the hell out of it because I can, or the guys that are me now can. Away from the coasts and the college towns, Wilson contends, America is still a conservative place. Accordingly, running against the devil contains a lot of what its author calls tough love, telling harsh truths and demanding Democrats put party purity aside. After all, the general election against Trump is going to be dirty as hell. Listen, another great quote here. This guy gets Democrats, man. Democrats tend to believe the country is completely homogenous politically. No matter how meritorious their position may be on gun control, for example, or not, it just kills them in rural areas. It destroys them. And again, I would say the same thing applies absolutely in reverse. No matter how meritorious you think your particular Republican position is, it's going to hurt you in some other place. That's just the way it works. It's just political reality. You can't please all of the people all the time. No matter how much they want to talk about choice and reproductive rights, when you go into Catholic communities, it is still a burden on them, and they don't have this ability to say, maybe rural Michigan isn't the same thing as San Jose, California. Prodding a sore, Wilson insists Trump's defeat in the popular vote in 2016 by nearly 3 million votes to Hillary Clinton, I would put an asterisk next to that, but, what does it matter? It's done now. Didn't matter. Nor will it matter if Trump wins the Electoral College again. Them's the rules. They ain't changing soon, and if the state doesn't help paint the college blue, no Democrat should visit it for anything other than dollars. He says, this isn't rocket science, and then I'll go to you for a comment on all this, James, and see what you think of it, and see if you get my point about applying things in reverse, right? Listen to this. This isn't rocket science. How did we Republicans elect guys in Wisconsin and Vermont and other places in recent years? We did it because we weren't running them as national Republican figures, right? Remember what I said about the Democrats in 2018? We helped elect a Republican governor in Vermont 4 times. And you're thinking, wow, Vermont, super liberal. How did that happen? Well, our guy was out there saying the Bush administration was wrong on climate change. Try a Democrat in rural Pennsylvania, say, who comes out and says, yes, I want to seize all automatic weapons. I want to make third trimester abortions fully taxpayer funded. That may work. That may provoke hosannas in San Francisco or Los Angeles, but out here, not as much. They're like, wait, what? So I wanted to share that with you, and then maybe give you a little bit of a segue into your defense, which I thought was entirely correct, of Matt Gaetz recently. Does any of this, do you think, apply to what happened to Matt Gaetz throughout the week?
Somewhat. Let me start with saying that here's a guy that I think you should understand is perfectly happy and thinks it's totally cool to put out a national publicated article that admits he's the biggest fucking liar on the planet.
Oh, it's a book. He's written a book about it.
Yeah, this guy has no problem with making sure everybody knows I lie better than everybody, and then tells you how he goes about lying. So now you've just learned why it's very important in the meme game. One of the questions in the chat while that was being read is, why would people believe them changing their positions? I will remind you that about 70 to 80% of the entire population of the United States is completely unplugged from politics right now. I will remind you that there is a reason why October surprises move elections. No, they're not plugged in. They're not paying attention to the Democratic debate. Look at the ratings. Okay. Most of America is completely disconnected from what's happening. They see maybe one headline. Like, I literally get questioned when I am out and saying, hey, well, how's the impeachment going? Or what happened with the impeachment? Why is Trump not removed yet? Like, I get questions like that while I'm out in public. People are unplugged. They don't understand what's happening. So Rick is giving you the Bible here. It's also why this is traditional history, Republican, Democrat, doesn't matter who you are. That politicians, right, the people we fucking hate, will run through a primary, and then once they've won the primary, completely change their positions on everything, right? This is exactly the point. is they're people, the majority of people are not plugged in. They're not paying attention. But now you understand why it's important for you to run the meme game hard, nonstop this entire year. Don't give them an inch. Don't forget to keep plugging away at pointing out where they said things completely opposite to what they're saying. That's why he's saying the mistake that Democrats are making is telling people who they are, not lying. He literally said they're telling the truth about who they are. They're going to take your guns. They're going to take your money. They're going to give you a little shoebox to live in. They're going to give you Agenda 2030. Like, he's telling you the truth. That the problem the Democrats are making is they're telling the truth about who you are. And that's exactly what you need to tie into. You need to understand that and keep hammering home the truth about who they are. And don't let them lie and get away with it, because you don't know when the population's going to decide to plug in, but it's generally not going to be until October. Literally. A week in some cases before the election. People will go, all right, let me see, who do I have to vote for? And they'll try to catch up on a year's worth of politics in a week through 2 YouTube videos. You just hope that you're the YouTube video that they see.
Yeah, I mean, when people say politics is a nasty business, that's not a meme. You know what I mean? So this guy coming out and saying these things doesn't offend me in the slightest. To me, it's just like a magician showing you how he pulls a rabbit out of a hat. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, that's how you did it. That's how it works. You know what I mean? Like, that doesn't offend me at all that he's coming out and saying the way that we win is by manipulating the truth. What do you think happens in politics? It's all a manipulation of truth, right? And because you got to win. You've got to win. If you can't win, then you can't change anything. So
right back to the 3 laws of politics that Boogie has been hammering you guys home with. This is it.
That's it. That's the game, man. That's the game. But like I said, I just thought it was interesting because we can point to the exact same thing happening in 2018 as to why the Democrats were so successful in various purple swinging districts in parts of the country that Donald Trump won, sometimes by 10 and 20 points, and they elected a local Democrat congressman. You know, it's not all vote rigging. I mean, we can talk about vote harvesting, and we can talk about election day rigging and stuff, but I think you're doing yourself a disservice if you just put every election defeat down to that, because you're missing stuff. You're not getting smarter. You're getting dumber by just saying, no, they won because they rigged the votes. It's like, well, now you're not actually looking at details that could help you improve next time out. That's what I think anyway. It's like in a football game, James, if you say, we didn't win because we didn't score enough touchdowns. It's like, yeah, okay, but why didn't we score enough touchdowns? Right? An impeachment trial is finally coming, James, and it could be exciting after all. Yay! Yay! Are you excited? Are you excited about the... You can't fucking wait, can you? You're on the edge of your seat. I, for one, I just want something to happen. Because these guys have built up every single trial, every single investigation, every single hearing into this is going to be it. Do you remember the pictures that were going around on Twitter when James Comey was testifying? Like, DC was fucking empty. Everybody was in front of a TV screen, you know what I mean? This is it. We're getting him. And then it was Robert Mueller. This is it. This is the one. This is the one that's going to happen. And then Brett Kavanaugh, James, remember that? Everybody, you got to watch what's happening with Brett Kavanaugh. This is going to be the thing that brings it down. We just keep getting moved on to the next outrage cycle. We get moved on to the next pantomime, the next theater performance, the next show. And everybody wipes. It's like everybody's walking around with one of those Men in Black memory things, you know, like, this is going to be the time that everything happens. This is going to be the exciting one. Okay, sounds good.
That's the point
we all
here.
Just forget what happened 3 years in the last 3 years.
I think that's the point here, and it's how do you breed apathy into a voter population, right? Look at the excitement behind Donald Trump. Okay, the excitement behind Donald Trump is 20,000, 30,000, 50,000 people showing up to a rally. There's a clear excitement in the air to vote for the voters. So if you want to build apathy, what would you do? You keep pumping them up that here it is, and then letting them down. And then here it is. And at some point, the people just go, fuck you, and walk away. That's how you create voter apathy. So it's actually a good tool, I think, that they're using. But here's why I think that they get it wrong every time. Is Donald Trump does what I just told you guys to do. Keep the fucking meme game up. Donald Trump knows how to rhetorically force them. Look, think about what he just did. I just want you to think about this one point. He just got all of the leftists in Congress and the media to defend Iran and a terrorist. I mean, this is not an accident, people. I mean, it doesn't matter what else you think about the actions. Rhetorically, he got them to do that. And he does it, and he keeps them. Again, let's look at Rick Wilson's article. Rick Wilson's article is to modify and to make sure that you're creating the middle ground. Donald Trump's not letting them occupy the middle ground rhetorically.
Framing and messaging and framing.
He's pushing them further and further left and keeping them there. It's like pinning your opponent in a boxing match against the ropes. You don't let him out of the fucking corner. You keep pummeling his ass, even if all you're doing is hitting his arms. You keep him in the fucking corner. And that's what Donald Trump's doing rhetorically to these people. And that's what highlights why in this impeachment trial, he's going to do it again. But as much as they try to build up the apathy, he just punches them right back into the corner. Get in your fucking corner over there, little boy.
I love the point about apathy. I thought of two analogies that I can express to help people understand what we're talking about. The first one a little more dramatic than the next, or depending on your perception. The first one being the Nazi bombing raids in London in World War II, James. They thought if we just keep bombing these people, eventually they'll give up. Because we're going to sap their energy. We're going to sap the enthusiasm out of them. They're going to sap the will to fight, right?
Yep.
What it actually did was steel them. It made them more committed. Yep. They were more when they started like anticipating the sirens going off, saying, "These fucking bastards, come on, let's get them." You know what I mean?
Yep.
So what was once a sound of fear became a sound of call to arms. It became a sound of bravery for people.
Yep.
The other analogy I want to say about building up apathy, it's like if a girl is a cock tease. So if you keep cock teasing somebody, right? Over and over and over and over again. Don't be surprised if at the end of this cock tease festival, the guy turns around to you and says, "Get your skank ass out of here. I don't want anything to do with you." You know what I mean? Like, you've teased me enough. And then you're going to be sitting on the end of the bed really disappointed that you played this guy for so long, that you teased this guy for so long, and now he doesn't want to touch you because of it. The mainstream media hasn't learned the lesson, the age-old lesson of the cock tease, James.
Yep.
Stop. Just stop. The standoff between House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell over the conduct of the trial has been an epic contest of wills. But I haven't seen it as an epic contest of wills. I've seen it as Nancy Pelosi screaming, making demands, and Mitch McConnell saying, "No, I don't think we're going to do that. We ain't going to do that."
Yeah, no.
Epic contest of wills, James. The battlegrounds, the battle lines have been drawn. Pelosi was dealt the weaker hand since she only has half of Congress. She's the one who played herself in. She's the one who sat down at the table and bought in. Yeah. She bought chips. She said, "I want to play." And now they're complaining, but she has a weak hand. Who told her to bet? Who told her to push all the chips in?
It's like she got dealt a pair of twos before she bought in and still bought in. I got a pair of twos. I'm buying in, baby. Wait, what?
Does anybody want to play this hand? Yes, I'll play it. Take everything I've got. I'm betting the whole election on a pair of deuces.
Yep.
Good work, Nancy. She was dealt the weaker hand since she only has half of Congress, while the Republicans have both the Senate and the presidency. But she's kept her caucus together, which is an interesting take on the situation, which is no mean feat considering that 3 Democrats voted against impeachment. I'm not sure how they can put that in there, just slip that in there without qualification. But anyway, it is Salon.
Lost Democrats. Wait, what?
The forgotten Democrats will pretend like they don't exist, which is no mean feat in of itself, and has managed to squeeze quite a bit out of her delay in sending the articles of impeachment to the Senate. Apparently, James, I heard that the articles of impeachment will be done on Tuesday, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, Nancy.
Did you hear that?
Yeah, Nancy. I heard Nancy herself yesterday, come out and say, I think it was today. She said, "Well, no," again, classic Nancy. "Well, no, that's not what I said. What I said was we'll have a meeting on Tuesday. Then we'll vote to decide whether or not we're going to send the articles on. And then according to that vote, we'll make a decision as to how we're going to move forward with maybe sending those articles over to the Senate." Okay, whatever. Basically, more bullshit. Just what do you call it? Word salad. Just coming out of her mouth. Yeah, it's just what it doesn't mean anything. Like, look, McConnell said, "I don't care what she does. Doesn't matter. Give them to us. Don't give them to us. The Senate's moving forward on this date.
Yep.
That's it. Fuck you."
Yep. Trump suggests here's another one for the file, James, of things that happen under every other president, which are now apparently criminal things, according to the press. Trump suggests he'd block Bolton testimony for the sake of office, James. You know what you were just talking about, taking weak points, looking for weak points and extracting them and then building up the anticipation, right? Building up the apathy. President Donald Trump indicated in an interview with Fox News Friday that he would invoke executive privilege to prevent former National Security Advisor John Bolton from testifying at the Senate impeachment trial. Earlier, I would have thought that is entirely standard fare.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I'm no fan of John Bolton, right? Like, that's pretty obvious to most people. But isn't it pretty standard fare for your, what was he again? National Security Advisor or Foreign Policy Advisor or Foreign Affairs? He was something pretty high up, right?
This is a literal precedence that was set, I don't know, over George Washington's presidency.
Right,
exactly. You can't have advisors talking to you that are then going to tell you the world what all of your communications were. This is correct. This is why you have executive privilege. There's nothing about it. In fact, I hate to say it this way, but even Clinton and Nixon both had the rights that they used for executive privilege, because you cannot tell the world what your advice is. And you can't tell what you're even thinking about, because the whole point is that, look, as the leader of this country, there's a public image and then there's private conversations, because you need to make decisions that affect the world. And that's correct. That's just the way it is. And I will defend Clinton on it just as much as I will defend Donald Trump on it. This is something that is long established precedent. You cannot, under any circumstance, and I even agree for foreign countries. I even agree for Iran. Okay, you can't put private communications out in public space and then make the world decide things based on those. I mean, that doesn't matter. It's all gobbledygook anyways.
Well, I like that they say Donald Trump is destroying the institutions, right? Donald Trump is destroying the institutions of government. And then in the very next breath, they'll say that any conversation that he's had in the Oval Office must now be fair game for everybody. It's like, well, no, you're destroying one of the institutions of government yourself when you do that. Yeah. And another thing I would say is, why do we even need John Bolton to testify anyway? Can't we just get Eric Charmella? Can't we just get the FBI in there? Yep. They're listening to all the comments. They're leaking private conversations. Yep. The intelligence community has been leaking private conversations with Donald Trump and other world leaders since he took the job. So what's the fucking difference? You already got all the info you need. Here's another one, James, just to pat ourselves on the back. Pete Buttigieg, ladies and gentlemen, our favorite Democrat candidate, besides Marianne Williamson, who we will get to next with something absolutely delicious.
Cecil, the latest Monmouth University poll out of New Hampshire shows essentially a four-way tie now in the race for the Democratic nomination there. Former Mayor Pete Buttigieg.
Have a look at that.
Let me just say
pardon
something.
me, I'm just going to break my shoulder bone from patting myself on the back here. Everybody said it can't happen. It won't happen.
Let me add to the back smacking there for Boogie, because when we fucking talked about it here, we both agreed to it, but he was the one that predicted him as the dark horse. I didn't say he was a dark horse. I said he's dangerous. But literally, people were saying, you guys are fucking idiots. He's a mayor. He'll never get to the top. People said that. He'll never get there. No, look where he's at. This is why he's a dark horse. Is he going to win? Probably not. That's not the point. The point is that he's made it to the top of the rankings ahead of Elizabeth Warren, ahead of crazy Uncle Bernie, ahead of creepy Uncle Joe. I mean,
he's in the game. He's in the game now. He's in the game.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, people often say, why do you cite things like Slate? Why do you cite things like Salon? Why do you cite things like Axios? That's how I figured it out that he was going to be a player. Yep. Because by viewing those, more fringy left-wing sources, I saw opinion piece after report after article after article after article. Buttigieg is so good. He's a great man. He's a good guy, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you don't have that level of fluff at that level of media without it filtering up.
Which tells you he was the golden
somebody's
boy.
Behind him. Somebody's pushing it, right?
Yep, that's it. He had a golden boy child about him. That's exactly the point. And that's exactly what we said at the very beginning. There was big money hidden from us that was pushing this because that somebody was buying all that fluff. That fluff doesn't just happen accidentally. When you have that level of what do you call that? Flooding the airwaves with stuff, you know that there's somebody pulling strings behind the scenes. Somebody's doing something, and that was why it was predictable. It's just like Tulsi Gabbard had big money behind her. We told you she was dangerous. She is dangerous. What is she there for? What did we tell you? We told you she was never going to be a player for president for real. She was lining up a war chest to run for the Senate. But why she was important is what is she doing? She's
herding votes.
That's right. She's herding votes. She's peeling away idiots like Cernovich. She's peeling away those people from Donald Trump and putting them on the Democrat checkbox. That's what she's there for and why she's dangerous. We predicted it all, and it's all happening in your face right now.
Tuesday's Democrat debate is a battle for heads and not hearts, James. And I'm thinking, well, how long is this rule going to last in the debate? I would put it to you about 30 seconds before somebody makes an emotional plea, before somebody makes an emotional argument about children in cages or something of that nature, right? The dynamics of the Democratic presidential race are about to change. Tuesday's debate in Des Moines will be the grand opening of a new set of conflicts and the launch of renewed efforts by candidates not named Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders to make 2020 something other than a lightly remolded version of 2016 primaries. James, can you see how the conversation is already starting to turn toward Mayor Pete? Mayor Pete, James.
Yep.
Hey, we've done Joe Biden. We've done Bernie Sanders. We know Elizabeth Warren. How about this guy? How about the new fresh talent, James?
Let me give you the complete cynical view here real quick. All right? Having said what we just said, let's game this out. If you know you're going to lose an election, do you put your heavy hitters up to bat? You know you're going to lose, right? No, you protect them for the next game.
That's why I think Michelle Obama isn't running this time.
Right, that's right. They know they're going to lose this election. So now all of a sudden they're going to fluff you out with who? Some random mayor of a fucking town that nobody ever fucking heard of that just ticks a lot of boxes for the lefties' social agenda. Right? He's gay. He believes in climate change. He's mostly socialist. He ticks
He's moving the needle, though.
He's young. He's energetic. He's moving the needle. Like all of these little check boxes he gets, right? Just think about the game. Let's game this out. So you know you're going to lose the election. Why would you risk something that can't be come back from, right? Once you lose, this is like Joe Biden again. 1% Joe. Okay? He never got there. Right? It literally never happened for him. Now all of a sudden, yeah, they're pushing him out there. Why? Because they don't have any serious candidates here. There's no serious candidates. Rick Wilson just highlighted it for you. There's no serious candidate here. Right? So who has the least baggage? Who could be their miracle boy? Who could be the shining knight that saves the Democrat Party?
Who could be their 2020 version of Barack Obama?
That's right. Nobody knows who the fuck this guy was, just like Obama. Who the fuck's Obama? The guy voted present. He voted present. The guy had no record. Same thing here. Now you've got another guy. He doesn't have baggage, right? So if Pete's the guy, what are we going to do? Are we going to go out there and hit him because he's gay? Are we going to go out there and hit him because he's young? How much baggage, how much attack zone is there? Right? Very little attack zone that he has. I'm not saying that he's going to win. My point is, think about this in the game. Game this out in your head. Right? There's way more attack zone to attack Bernie, to attack Warren, to attack Biden. Right? They all have major baggage with major attack points that the people are going to be like, we're not voting for this scumbag, just like what happened with Hillary Clinton. Major baggage, she got lost. That's how we got lucky and won with Donald Trump. Was Hillary Clinton was such a bad candidate. People were like, fuck you, I will vote for the devil before I vote for this bitch. Okay? We don't have that with Pete Buttigieg. Pete Buttigieg is a much cleaner candidate for them to run. So that's why we got to game these things out and see that it's actually it's a coin flip if he wins this thing.
Cool. And somebody in the chat said, do your homework on Pete. We have. I know of the scandals in South Bend. I know the scandals with the police thing, right? I know the scandals with the shooting of the black guy. Here's another thing for you, right? That you have to, just because you know the bad side of somebody doesn't necessarily make a difference. Here's my point. You know what a lot of donors and stuff look to when they think about who they're going to put their money behind, James, and audience? It's how do they respond to a crisis? Like, how do they have the ability to bounce back after a negative news cycle? The very fact that Pete Buttigieg is sitting on top in this poll at 20% proves to Democrat donors that he has the ability to respond to a negative news cycle. And that's something that they look for in politics. Like, can you recover? Because you're going to get hit. You're going to get smeared. Somebody is going to dig up something bad on you. Look at Kamala Harris, perfect example. She could not recover from Tulsi Gabbard's attack at the on that debate stage, right? After that, it just went downhill, and it kept going downhill. Pete Buttigieg, on the other hand, he was attacked as well over his handling of the police issues in South Bend, Indiana. He's rode it out, and he's coming back. Listen, and so people will say he's got staying power. He's got longevity. He can react well to a crisis.
Yeah, and a great point by our resident Democrat here in the chat, lifelong Democrat, Lucifer Sam. Lucifer Sam is telling everybody he is a Harvard-educated establishment candidate. This is a guy in the game, in the circles, in the know. We've already highlighted this, right? How did he get all the fluff he got in the beginning? How did that happen? He's got power players behind him. He's in the game. You don't have to like it. You just have to understand it. That's why we talk about these things at the time of and at the level of telling you, understand the game. This is not about right, wrong, good, bad. There is much less attack zone against Pete than there is against the other candidates. There's a lot of things that are lining up here to just like, how the fuck did Obama win? All right. Again, most people, they hated John McCain, right? That he was a very polarizing person. Never should have been the candidate in the first fucking place. But again, a guy from nowhere won. Okay? Just you gotta pay attention to the subtleties to understand how to fight better against it. We're going to win, but only if we fight at the top of our game.
It's like throwing curveballs against a midget. Right. There's a very small strike zone, James.
That's right.
There's a very small margin for error when that guy's up at bat. This is a fun one. Elizabeth Warren says Bernie Sanders sent volunteers out to trash me. I thought they were cut from the same cloth, James. Yeah. Ms. Warren said she was disappointed the Sanders campaign had used a script for volunteers that suggested she appealed mainly to highly educated voters. Now we love the poorly educated voters again, James. Isn't that the darndest thing? Mr. Sanders called her a good friend and said reports of the tension were overblown. A nearly year-long run of goodwill between the two leading progressives in the 2020 presidential race, Senator Elizabeth Warren and Senator Bernie Sanders, appears to be evaporating in the run-up to the Iowa caucuses. Of course it would. Ms. Warren said on Sunday she was disappointed that Mr. Sanders' campaign had been using a script for volunteers that suggested she was appealing mainly to highly educated voters and would not be able to expand the Democratic Party coalition. I was which I think is an objectively truthful statement, if I'm being honest. I was disappointed to hear that Bernie is sending his volunteers out to trash me. I hope Bernie reconsiders his turn and turns his campaign in a different direction. See, this is politics as well. Elizabeth Warren, like a lot of politicians, loves to be the victim. Got to play the victim routine. It would be highly ridiculous to suggest that Bernie Sanders is standing there in a room with people who hand out pamphlets going, what I want you to do, okay? You need to trash Elizabeth Warren at every possible possibility. You need to make sure that you go out there and kick Elizabeth Warren's ass, all right? He's not doing that. It's not him making the call. It's somebody on the team. It's somebody at the lower level. It's never the guy making those kinds of recommendations. You know why? Because Bernie Sanders doesn't have to. He employs people to do it for him. That's why.
Yeah, and here's another point to be made right here. Once again, what's really happening on here? Now think about this. We know for a fact this is beyond a shadow of a doubt fact. It's been publicized by Democrats, okay, by everybody. That the Democrat Party as a whole works cohesively. They know what's going on. They decide who their candidate is, and they don't give a fuck about the voters. This is beyond a shadow of a doubt, right? So what effect does Warren and Biden have in fact, let's put it this way. Why is there not really some frontal attacks against Pete? Think about it. They're clearing space for Pete. And now what's going to happen at the end? I'm going to tell you what the next cycle is. They're going to spend time ignoring Pete, right? Mostly the attacks, not all. Most of the attacks are going to be between those other three candidates. And then at the end, when it's time to highlight Pete, one of them is going to launch a softball attack against Pete, and Pete's going to come out on top of it like the shining hero to show that he's got the stamina to take on Joe. If I can take out Uncle Joe, I can take out Donald Trump. I'm telling you, the narrative is writing itself right now as I'm watching them play the game. I can tell you the narrative, how it's going to happen. You watch. That's going to happen.
Yep, I think that's definitely on the table. Let's go to our favorite girl, James, of the 2020 presidential race. I am, of course, speaking about the irrepressible, the lovely Marianne Williamson, James. She's thrown in the towel. Can you just press F in the chat for Marianne Williamson? She's going to be sorely missed, as far as I'm concerned. Marianne Williamson on Hot Mic. Conservatives are nicer to me than lefties. And this, now I know that you and Lucifer Sam have your battles in your Periscope. This is something that when I watch Lucifer Sam on Twitter, I can absolutely attest to, and I think that he may attest to it as well, at least on some level. Lucifer Sam gets attacked by Democrats more than you do. Trust me. I've watched him work on Twitter. I've watched him attack Nancy Pelosi and get accused by other Democrats of being a sexist pig. Okay, so just so you know, just all's fair. 2020 Democrat presidential candidate and self-help author Marianne Williamson has found politics to be a bizarre world. Speaking into a hot mic when she thought she was off camera on Tuesday, Williamson said she found conservatives to be much nicer to her than liberals, whom she has recently criticized for becoming too anti-religion, James. I'm going to play this clip, but I'm also going to, there's a guy here, an author. He's an author. He's a commentator. He's a columnist. And he recently put out on Twitter, because he's been, he would be on the left, I think, fairly center left, but, a middle guy, but probably falls on the left most of the time when it comes to politics. He put out a tweet here, in Australia last week that said something to the effect of, I'm often attacked by the far left and the far right, but fact number 2, the far right are much nicer. So this is not like not breaking news here. I think this is something that we can all point to in our personal experience and say, yeah, that's pretty fair. I've never had too many Christians come up to me and say that they wish I was dead, James, to be fair. The sweet, timid, evangelical Trump voters very seldom come up to me and say, you disgusting demon pig. Fuck you, you racist motherfucker. That's generally not the reception I get. When they disagree with me and really believe in their disagreement, I tend to get something more along the lines of, I really like listening to you, but I'm afraid I can't agree with that particular point. Sorry. You know what I mean? It's a very different approach. But let's see what Marianne Williamson had to say on this issue.
Does it say that Fox News is nicer to me than the lefties are?
I'm sorry?
What does it say? That the conservatives are nicer to me?
It's a bizarre world, man.
It's such a bizarre world. I'm such a lefty. I mean, I'm a serious lefty. But I understand why people on the right call them godless. I mean, it's like, I didn't think the left was as mean as the right. They are.
Well, welcome to the party, Marianne.
Yeah, I saw this before. I mean, it's
Isn't
clear.
it great?
It's great. I mean, a lot of lefties are waking up to that. A lot of them on Twitter are realizing that they're like, what are you guys doing? We're gonna lose because you can't keep your shit together. Like, it's like, and again, it highlights what you talked about and what I talked about of Matt Gaetz. You disagree with a guy over one fucking thing, and suddenly, you fucking traitor motherfucker! Get the fuck out of MAGA, you piece of fucking shit! What? Yeah. I'm sorry, how is that helpful? What? Like, no, we can't be those people. We have to be the thinking people that it's okay to have a disagreement. Look, Boogie and I are the best of fucking friends. Last week, we spent an entire fucking 2 hours going to war. Fucking just going at it over debating issues.
Unfortunately, not metaphorically.
And we're the best of friends still. Why? Because it's okay to have an intellectual disagreement with someone, because that's what being a free thinking person is. If you're just stuck in a rut where, nope, whatever this says is goes, you're not being a free independent thinker. You're being a sheeple. There's no room for that if you want to help save this country. Because there's the whole point, like we talked about again, I'm going to bring it back to Matt Gaetz again. We have to have the debate. Let's let the debate happen so that we can win it. You can't win it if it's, again, it goes back to First Amendment. First Amendment is, what's the whole point? You have the right to hear shit you disagree with. Why? Because it allows you to fine-tune and hone your argument. It is much better to hone your argument against me, against Boogie, against someone that mostly agrees with you, against Matt Gaetz. Hone the argument so that you can win the debate. If all you do is shut down the debate and ignore the debate, you don't even have the arguments to win anything against any lefty, against people like Democrats or the trolls that are in here. You have to understand how to get the points across. Okay? You have to be able to deliver them. And that is how you will win the debate, is you have to have the debate first.
If you haven't tested your position against the best possible defense, then you have no right to hold that position, generally speaking, right? If you haven't tested your particular position on a policy or a platform or a candidate or whatever against the best possible argument against, be intellectually honest with yourself. Look at why you think something and say, how could somebody attack me because I believe this? How could I possibly be exposed as being wrong here? Do that. Test yourself against the best possible counter argument. Otherwise, you're only leading yourself into, certain misery down the road. Just on Matt Gaetz, pardon me. I just said before the show to James, I applauded Matt Gaetz for what he did. And if people don't get the distinction here, it's got nothing to do with agreeing with him or disagreeing with him. It's really nothing to do. I just applaud him for doing it. Yeah. I applaud him for standing there and, going against the tide. I will always support people who go against the tide, even if I don't agree with them.
I even went further than Boogie. I said I completely disagree with what he said. I am 100% opposed to what he said. Go Matt Gaetz. You see the difference? Is that exactly. It's getting us to the debate so that we can have it, so that we can explain the positions to people who otherwise are just going, oh, you're a bunch of orange man bad tards.
With that being said, James, let's load it up. Let's get that arm loosened up because it's time for the hammering, brother.
Stop the hammering.
Michael Smerconish on CNN, James, has been on an absolute mindless fucking tear over the last 2 months to throw his support behind Michael Bloomberg in the 2020 presidential race. This is the second time we've gone back to the well with Smerconish. Do you remember the first one? Do you remember the first time where he said, here is a real candidate. He's doing it for the right reasons because he's a billionaire and he doesn't have to? And we were like, hey, hang on a minute.
Yeah, hang on a minute.
Don't we already have that guy? Oh no, it's different for him. It's different for him. Different set of rules apply. So he's not letting up. He's doubling down in his support for Michael Bloomberg. Let's find out why we're all so stupid and Michael Smerconish is so smart, and why Michael Bloomberg is in fact going to be the significant impact on the race in 2020. Just a quick refresher: Michael Bloomberg is not polling more than 1% at this point. So he's leaving his run a little late, but let's not pretend like it. Let's put it on the table. Let's not pretend like it's out of the realm.
Real quick, just to put a fact on the table, did you also see that Bloomberg, even though he's polling at 0.0%, has already committed $1 billion to defeating Donald Trump of his own money? So it doesn't even matter. He said if it's not me, he's still going to put the $1 billion in the game.
Okay, let's do it.
The conventional view is that Mike Bloomberg's late entry into the 2020 race will hamper his ability to win the Democratic nomination because, after all, he's not competing in the first 4 states.
I would say Michael Bloom. I would say the thing that's hampering Michael Bloomberg's election win in 2020 is Michael Bloomberg. More than any other factor, the fact that he is Michael Bloomberg is the thing that's hurting him the most. But maybe that's just me.
I see something different.
Okay, good.
That maybe he's made a wise political calculation and that the dominoes are falling as he needs them to.
What?
Okay. I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued. I need to know more. I must know what's behind this thought bubble. Let's see if the argument, let's test the argument. We just spoke about giving the people the best possible chance, James. Let's test the argument. Let's see if there's anything to it.
I said on my Sirius XM radio program this week that if you could put Bloomberg in a time machine and let him start the race sooner, I don't think he'd take that deal.
What?
Okay. So it's like, okay, Michael, I'm giving you an opportunity here to put the best foot forward for your candidate. I'm giving you the best opportunity here to make the argument. Why are you bringing up time machines? Let's not go down the butterfly effect route, shall we?
To be sure, his approach has met with skepticism, as the New York Times...
I think Michael Bloomberg is doing the right thing, because if I invented a time machine and offered him the ability to go back and do it differently, I don't think he would. Bravo. Bravo. What an argument.
Has recently put it, quote, there's a way that people generally run for president, and there is whatever Mr. Bloomberg is doing, looking past Iowa and New Hampshire to focus on the delegate-rich contests that come in the months that follow. Mr. Bloomberg is betting that his zag while they zig electoral strategy and functionally bottomless resources can make him the standard bearer of a Democratic Party whose 2020 primary has been defined in part by progressive disdain for the billionaire class.
Wait, so he's going to get he's going to get around the disdain for the billionaire class, James, by not going to Iowa and not going to New Hampshire, and instead making announcements that he's got so much money he's just going to give it anyway. He's a fucking genius. Why didn't I think of that? James, there's a lot of hatred for the billionaire class in the Democrat Party right now. I can tell you the way that I'm going to address this is I promise to give $1 billion to the Democrat Party.
I think Bloomberg has a better shot of getting the 1.77 gigawatts time machine going.
The Times piece implicitly criticized Bloomberg using those deep pockets to buy a lot of ads while skipping a lot of the grunt work of running.
Right.
The debates, the large-scale rallies, the posing for selfies with hundreds of voters.
It's very easy. I imagine it's very easy for Michael Bloomberg to skip the large-scale rallies, James. Just putting that out there as a thought. He doesn't even have to try to skip the large-scale rallies, from what I understand. They just come naturally.
45 people to show up to some event that he just had. Yeah, that's a good numbers.
Great comment in the chat from Nova Moon. He's the billionaire you can love. He's a good billionaire. He's a good guy. Remember on that, was it a town hall where he said, well, we need to raise taxes because poor people are too stupid to know what to do with their own money. Right?
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah, he's really going to win those. He's really going to win those people in Michigan and Wisconsin over with that kind of talk.
This is the guy that literally admitted on national television the point you just made, that he purposely keeps poor people poor because they make poor decisions if they have too much money.
It's a surefire strategy, James.
But maybe
it's like, let's make elitism great again.
It's not his indifference or an unwillingness to engage in retail politics that kept him out of the early contests, but game theory.
Game theory, James.
A bit of history. Like Donald Trump before him, Mike Bloomberg long flirted with running for president before actually becoming a candidate.
Yeah, but he had to wait for another billionaire to do it first, didn't he? He had to wait for another billionaire to step up to the plate first and say, well, maybe I could do it now. History doesn't really remember the second guy who walks on the moon as much as the first, right? I think that's a fair thing to say.
Yep.
And like Donald Trump, he's never had a doctrinaire devotion to a particular political party.
Right.
What?
Remember,
Wait, what?
Running against...
Whoa, what?
That is true. Trump was a registered Democrat. I've often said he's not a conservative. Photos doesn't mean much, though.
What the fuck was that? Dude, that's a fucking word salad fucking conundrum he just tried to put out there. Somehow,
Oh, yeah.
Donald Trump, who is a lifelong loved Democrat from everybody, when he realized the Democrat Party had completely left America, said, what? And became the Republican leader, won in the Republican Party because he arguably is exactly this, a blue dog Democrat. That's why he won as a Republican, because he arguably is a blue dog Democrat. He largely gets a pass from conservatives because he's leading conservative values back to where they should be. This is the whole point.
Sorry to interrupt. We've played on this show 2 speeches, like we've read 2 transcripts of Donald Trump explaining his tax policy. Do you remember this episode? And then we put it next to JFK explaining his tax policy, and it's practically identical, like the same reasoning.
Yep. Excellent.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was saying, yep, excellent. No, that's exactly right. This is like I would like to hear him say it again, because it's a brain fuck. I mean, it literally is. You have to parse what he's saying here to figure it out.
Let's see it again.
But maybe it's not his indifference or an unwillingness to engage in retail politics that kept him out of the early contests, but game theory.
Game theory.
A bit of history. Like Donald Trump before him, Mike Bloomberg long flirted with running for president before actually becoming a candidate. And like Donald Trump, he's never had a doctrinaire devotion to a particular political party. Remember, before running against Hillary in 2016, Donald Trump had been a contributor of hers.
That's right.
Bloomberg had been a Democrat before switching to run.
Which is something, people, this is why I never get too excited about, oh, look, there's a photo of this rich guy with another rich guy. I'm like, yeah, what the fuck do you think rich people do? Rich people go to dinner parties and take photos with one another, because you might, even if you, I'm not saying that he did hate the Clintons, but even if you really do hate a particular politician and you're a rich business guy, it's probably in your interest to keep them on the good side, because you never know when you might need them, right? That's just a general law of what happens at the top. So people would say like, oh, look, here's Barack Obama being pictured with such and such. I'm like, yeah, but here's Donald Trump being pictured with Hillary Clinton. The point of the story is rich people and business people get pictures with each other all the fucking time, right? They mix in the same circles a lot of the time. So don't read too much into it. But I love how they're trying to use that as an attack point. So I know Donald Trump was saying that in order to get ahead in business, you got to grease the wheels with politicians, and that's part of the problem, right? Do you remember that?
Yep.
It's part of the problem. You've got to give campaign donations to get shit done.
Run for New York City mayor in 2001 as a Republican. In 2007,
he used to be a Republican. He's your friend.
He announced that he was no longer affiliated with either party, a move that many thought was a prelude to an independent run for president.
Which always works well.
And that suspicion lasted nearly a decade. Then in March of 2016, he ended speculation that he would run as an independent by writing this editorial: "The risk I will not take. An independent candidacy could split the Electoral College and allow Congress to elect an extremist."
Ah.
Yet he also attacked...
By the way, just a refresher, poor people shouldn't be allowed to keep their own money because they're stupid. We wouldn't want to elect an extremist now, would we?
Candidate Donald Trump at the time, saying he has run the most divisive and demagogic presidential campaign I can remember, preying on people's prejudices and fears.
Again.
And then he delivered a fiery anti-Trump speech at the 2016 Democratic National Convention. In 2018, he switched his affiliation back to Democrat and donated millions to midterm candidates, launching speculation that he would run as a Democrat.
But you know, another part about this, which I really love, which I just find truly delicious, James, haven't we been getting told for the last 3 years that old rich white guy, old rich businessman is horrible for the United States?
Yep.
I mean, like, isn't this the story we've been getting told from CNN?
Yep.
Old rich white guy, old rich businessman, can't have one. Oh, wait, we found an old rich white businessman right here. He'll do fine. This is exactly what we need, guys.
Yep. The Democrats are so disjointed in their messaging. They're just so disjointed in their messaging that they have no cohesion, which is the exact point of Donald Trump. It's chaos theory. He wants to talk about game theory. We'll talk about chaos theory. We're going to keep the Democrats in a completely chaotic state. It's just like in fact, right now, I mean, again, this is a point of contention. Lucifer Sam wanted to bring up deficit spending again. He's totally lost on the economy. The numbers are in. Revenues are up. Lucifer Sam said, nope, revenues are going to be down. He's proven wrong. The numbers are in. The economy has grown at a record pace. The economy is at record levels. Record wage increases for the longest extended period of time in American history, and the highest level of wage increases in American history. So everything that's happening in the economy is good for Donald Trump. But there's still, again, this is why I bring it up, there's still Democrats like Lucifer Sam that think that that's somehow a winning argument, that somehow you're going to be able to argue deficit spending, take away money from Americans. I'm sorry, it's not going to work. It's the same chaos theory. They're completely disjointed. They don't have anything of substance that they can point to that's a winning argument. They can make arguments, but they're not winning arguments, and they're so all over the place. That's the thing. That's why we keep winning, is because Donald Trump keeps them on the ropes in the corners.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously, just a little bit about me. When it comes to like social policy, I'm quite like liberal when it comes to social issues. I really don't care what people do with their own bodies and their own lives, and that's not for me. That's for you. Like, that's your problem. But when it comes to economics, I'm so far right that I'm slapping Milton Friedman on the ass more often than not.
Yeah.
So I obviously have a very big problem with government spending $1 more than it absolutely necessarily has to, right? So I look at the spending bills of Western countries like, Australia, the UK, and of course the United States. I look at the debt and it makes my eye twitch. Yeah. But there's a political reality that purists are not willing to entertain. The problem is, right, if you are an economic purist like myself and you say that we need massive cuts, and we do, we need massive cuts in government spending across the board. And when I say massive cuts, I mean savage cuts. It's got to hurt, right? That's what we need, right, to try and get some kind, give ourselves some kind of chance of avoiding economic apocalypse if it's 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road. The current trend cannot continue. But if you run on savage cuts, you don't get elected, because people in their daily life say, well, I believe in cutting the budget, but not from me. Take it from that guy. Don't take my money. Take that guy's money. That guy has too much money. Why are you taking it away from me? So people won't vote for you. And instead, they'll vote for the person that promises them more shit. So the only option you have, even if you are an economic purist, is you have to try and grow out of it, which it's a long shot. Granted, it's a fucking long shot, but that's really the only option you have. If you run on savage cuts, you're not going to get elected, and somebody who spends more is. And if you don't grow out, you know what I mean? Like, you're fucking damned if you do, damned if you don't.
And you just hit the highlight of why Donald Trump's going to win on this issue and continue to win, is because he did exactly what you just said. He said we're going to grow out of it, and the proof is in the economy that we're growing out of it, number one. Number two is that it's the behind the scenes thing that he's actually doing but not touting so much, because he's dressed it up in a nice candy wrapper. We are savagely cutting out organizations like the EPA. We are savagely cutting out bureaucracy all over the place, even on, wait for it, the National Security Council. Over half of the jobs, gone, out, bye-bye. He's doing the exact same thing that you just said, savage cuts, but he's doing it with candy wrappers. He's trying to consolidate departments of the country, of the government. He's getting rid of, by not hiring and replacing people that retire or are fired. He's doing what's called baseline budgeting to cover the cuts, okay? Baseline budgeting, when you remove half of the EPA staff, remember, labor is the most expensive thing that costs our government the most amount of money. It's labor. Correct. It's not anything else. It's not paper. It's not toilet bowls. It's not golden hammers. It's labor. And so,
it's also unfunded liabilities, because these people have pensions and stuff after they retire, which are right now, there's no money for it, in the future, right?
That's right. And he's cut half of 6 million people off of food stamps? That's unfunded liabilities. That's 6 million of them gone. So baseline budgeting is exactly how he's doing it. It's just they're all dressed up with nice bows around them that prove to the American people he's not running on savage cuts, yet he's still accomplishing savage cuts right there in your face. And you're going, yeah, cut them motherfuckers. Get rid of them.
Yep, I think it's a good start. Anyway, I would like to see far more savage. I want it so savage that people shit their pants when they think about it. That's what I want. But you take the regulatory position that he took that was the first thing he did when he came into office, right? For every new regulation you want, you have to cut 2 of them. Yep. Now, people don't generally think of it beyond that, but what happens when you cut regulations? You cut the need to employ people to enforce said regulations, right? Yep. Because there's less paperwork coming through the department. There's less approvals that need approving. There's less court battles. There's less environmental impact statements. There's less and less and less and less of a paperwork mountain to get through. So business accelerates because things aren't locked up in the approval process as long, and you can cut money out of your overheads thanks to wages and time of people who are going through those approval processes and enforcing those regulations. So
exactly what he proved on highway funding. Exactly what he proved on highway funding.
Yep, 100%.
Yet again if he'd run as an independent. So he squashed those rumors once and for all. Mike Bloomberg has always been about the numbers. In fact, his current slogan is, "In God we trust, everybody else bring data."
Well, it's not the catchiest slogan out there. If I think of election slogans that have been successful, hope and change, make America great again, in God we trust, but bring the data. Okay. It's esoteric, to put it one way.
And that was his view of the presidential race as an independent 1 year ago.
Right.
When he released a statement saying this.
What?
The data was very clear and very consistent. Given the strong pull of partisanship and the realities of the electoral college system, there is no way an independent can win. That is truer today than ever before.
But it is possible to run as a candidate in a party and basically bash your own party for being wrong for years and years and years and still win the election, right? Because we've seen that too, haven't we? Yeah. Haven't we seen the candidate that's up on the stage with the other Republicans saying, no, you know, half of the problem is half of these people on this stage, by the way, they're not doing a good job either. It's not only the Democrats, it's also these motherfuckers up here as well. You know, what are you voting for them for? They've been in power for 20 years. They haven't done anything.
In 2020, the great likelihood is that an independent would just split the anti-Trump vote and end up re-electing the president. That's a risk I refused to run in 2016, and we can't afford to run it now.
So the better strategy, James, is to say that you are the friend of the working class whilst avoiding Iowa and New Hampshire. The best strategy in light of this revelation from Michael Bloomberg, James, is to take note of the anti-billionaire class sentiment within the DNC and then commit billions of dollars to your own election at the head of the DNC. And rather than split the anti-Trump vote, James, by running as an independent, Michael Bloomberg's strategy is to run as a Democrat without showing up to important caucuses and poll 0.0%. Michael Bloomberg is a political genius, James. Michael Smercornish sees it, and now you see it too, and that's your hammering.
Stop the hammering.
Folks, that's all the time we got for you today. If you are not following us on DLive, what the fuck is wrong with you? Get over there to DLive, follow me, follow Boogie, follow us at Tab Show, all the same names, all the same handles. We try to pay you to watch this show. That's right, we are bribing you. We are not above bribery. So get on over there. Boogie's going to open the chest here in a minute so that maybe you can get a few lemons, a few shekels for watching this show. We love you guys. Thanks for being here. If you want to follow him, you can follow him at Boogie Bumper. If you want to follow me, you can follow me at Real Person, PLTCS. If you want to follow us, you can follow us at TAVshow.com. And as always, follow us on DLive. Aloha. We'll see you next week.
Okay, odds are you're one of the people in America who's better off today than 3 years ago. And now you've got some smug Democrat calling you racist and trying to jam one hand in your ass and another in your pocket. So at a time when taxes are down, jobs are up, and the economy is way up, it'd be nice if there were a candidate who had more to offer than making you pay for other people's shit. Well, the eagle has landed. Say hello to President Donald J. Trump. He ain't just making America great again. Trump's doing things no president has ever done before. He's keeping promises, packing courts, defending the border, rebuilding our military, and making Chuck Schumer cry like a schoolgirl with two skin knees. This president is 6'3" of let's put America first. And oh yeah, immigration, jobs, drug prices, nobody's got better numbers. The game has changed, and the Democrats are officially fucking crazy. So keep America great. Stand with Trump in 2020.
Got it from my daddy. Daddy. 낮에는 잠만 자. 밤이 오면 상남자. 널 보자마자 나 너무 좋았어. 네가 보면 hand me down. 신나면 너리 hand me down. 오빠가 깜빡이 안 켜고 훅 때려 get me down. Hold up, wait a minute. 지금부터 선수끼리 밤이 아까워 turn up louder 불타오르는 나름다운 그대여. How you like me now? How you like me now? How you like me now? How you like me now?
Hey, where'd you get that body from? Where'd you get that body from? Where'd you get that body from?
I got it from my daddy. I got it from my daddy. I got it.
Hey, where'd you get that body from?
I got it from my daddy. I got it from my daddy. I got it.
Hey, where'd you get that body from?
I got it from my dad. Daddy. I got it from my dad. Daddy. Listen, my papa was a Superman. Hey, 그대로 받아왔어, come on man. Hey, 신사 이길 거부하는 신사. 이 구역에 미친놈은 바로 나. Hey, I got it from my dad. Daddy, I got it from my dad. Daddy, I got it from my dad. Daddy.
Donald Trump, great God Emperor, the greatest American hero, MAGA man. He's dropping down from his tower while landing on the nose of the globalist plan. He can't stop what he's doing because he knows what he's doing. You just need to understand. See, there's a storm coming. You better be running. Up to you if you trust the plan. He doesn't jump, he plows through every hurdle. He even makes you fight within your own circle. And he fights you like a ninja turtle. All you do is complain while he lives rent-free inside your brain. And now you've gone insane. TDS makes you want to sing his name.
Clinton got played. They went into the booth. I said, is anybody watching?
Trump. Second verse. And we all know this situation's gonna get worse. They keep bashing the old man, but he bashes back, you get hit with the Trump curse. You think your dookie smells sweet, as if you've got pretty feet. Trump drops a tweet like a funky fresh dance on your ass where you cannot compete. That's why you got the blues. You're on the run, shake you out of your shoes. And you're wondering why he's calling you fake news. All you do is complain, as he lives rent-free inside your brain. And now you've gone insane. TDS makes me love to sing his name.